Hello, my name is Anuska and welcome to my channel. So on today's video, we're talking all about the power of posture and how our voice can be impacted by our postural alignment. So I'm going to be sharing 3 of the main distortion patterns that we can all find ourselves in, and just to talk a little bit more about the impact on the voice, so that then hopefully you can bring a little bit more awareness to your own voice. Now, before I start this, I just wanted to give a little bit of background on myself, because I haven't done this for a while and I've had a lot of new subscribers recently. So my name is Anuska. I'm a voice coach, I'm a Jungian life coach, and I'm a professional singer-songwriter. And what that means for the clients that I work with is I really have a holistic approach to working with voices, because I've got the sort of technical, functional, physiological understanding of the voice, how the voice really works and how to get the most from it. Also the kind of paralinguistic side of speech, which is really about expression. And finally, the psychological side, which I bring in using the Jungian psychology, which is really about how our mind drives our voice ultimately. So I've done lots of videos on that topic, and I will continue to cover all the different kind of areas of how I coach and work with clients. But also, as a professional singer myself, I know firsthand what it is like to stand on a stage, whether it's a metaphorical stage or an actual stage, and share your voice in high demanding situations where you could well be feeling very anxious or nervous. So I have had to learn how to handle that myself. And that's some of the things I like to share, not only in my videos, but also when I work privately with people. So let's get on to today's topic. And first of all, before we get into the distortion patterns, we have to understand a little bit about the spine. And for any voice user, whether you're a public speaker, whether you are a singer, however you use your voice, the spine is the foundational support of your voice. This includes all the moving parts that facilitate breathing, as well as the functions of the larynx, the articulators, and the resonators. So really everything that we would consider to be part of using our voice. Now, we're not aiming for a perfect posture, which is actually why I called the video postural alignment, because it's not really about finding a perfect posture. It's actually more about our spine being free of postural distortions and dynamically stabilized, meaning we're not gripping, we're not tensing, we're not rigidly holding our body, but there's a softness, and it means then we can move our hands, we can walk around, and we can do this freely with minimal effort. So that's what we want. And obviously there are more demands as a singer, but still as a speaker, you will be moving your hands, you may be walking around. So it all is relevant regardless. Now, when we're not in balance, the voice will be impacted. And I know this firsthand myself, which is why I've got such an interest, particularly in this topic. And I'll talk about what I've done later in the video. And what happens then if things aren't functioning properly and we're kind of out of balance, we start recruiting muscles to compensate. And this is where we can actually start to create voice problems as well, but that could be a whole other video. So first of all, some basic anatomy. So the spine is formed of 24 vertebrae, the sacrum and the coccyx. The top 7 vertebrae form what we call the cervical spine. The middle 23 vertebrae form the thoracic spine, and the lower 5 vertebrae form the lumbar spine. And you may have heard of those terms before. And so in a healthy spine, there are 3 natural curves. And what's important about those curves is they have mutually supportive relationships to each other. So they all kind of work together to allow the body to be strong and to be able to move and do what we want to do. Now, in the late 1970s, Dr. Vladimir Janda identified 3 major distortion patterns. And I think they are still as relevant today as they were in the 70s. In fact, in some ways, I think they're more relevant today, particularly the first one, because I honestly think we could all identify with at least one of these. I know I can probably identify with all of them in some way, but particularly the first one, which I'm going to talk about, which is upper crust syndrome. This is the idea of the head protruding forwards, the shoulders are hunched, the chest is collapsed, and we could be like at a computer, we could be on our device. And I think a lot of you know, the changes in how we live these days on devices, on our phones, on computers, driving, it all actually contributes to more of this upper cross syndrome, which he was referring to. And I absolutely identify with this one myself. And I've had to do a lot of work myself in this particular syndrome that he's talking about. So when the head protrudes forwards, got to remember the head is extremely heavy, and the average adult head weighs about 5 kilos, which is incredibly heavy. So if it's not actually balanced on the body properly, it's putting a lot of pressure through the neck. And if you've watched any of my other videos, you know how interconnected the whole body is. So then when you put pressure on the neck, you are inadvertently then creating a lot of restriction within the voice, limited movement, and the voice can become quite unstable. Also with the chest collapsed and the muscles of the chest, so we're kind of like this, we're in this kind of hunched position, the chest is collapsed, the muscles of the chest then become chronically tight, particularly like the pec area, and that means the ribs can't fully expand, and this is going to impact our breathing as well. So already just with this one syndrome, you can see that it's going to impact the larynx and also our breathing. So the second one is called lower cross syndrome, and this is essentially when there's an exaggerated curve in the lumbar spine or the lower back area, and then the belly kind of sticks out. So we're in this kind of banana shape almost. There's tightness in the hips and the hip flexors, and the abdominals are kind of weak because they're not actually engaged, they're not really switched on, and all of the pressures going into the lower back. And again, I can identify with this one too. So I can identify with all of them, to be honest, in different ways. So from a voice perspective, there is a link between kind of tension and tightness in the hips and the jaw. And we know that the jaw is extremely important for the voice and how jaw tension can impact the voice. But also just in terms of this distortion, the tightness in the lower back and the weakness in the abdominals can actually really restrict the movement of the diaphragm, which of course we need for breathing. And also with the core muscles being compromised, it's going to really impact the respiratory system. So again, there's some common themes here. So with this one particularly, a lot of the restrictions are around the respiratory system and how we can breathe efficiently and freely. So number 3 is pronation distortion. And this is where there's a kind of internal rotation of the knees with the kind of feet sticking out. The hips then, there's tightness in the hips again, and the glutes are also often weak and the calves are also tight. So there's just a lot of instability in the lower part of our body. And this instability in the sort of leg musculature has a massive impact on the spine. And so obviously breathing is impacted and vocal stability. This is also particularly important if you're a woman that likes to wear high heels. I think particularly the lower cross syndrome, it can really sort of throw our body out of alignment when we are wearing heels. And again, I'm talking about this from my own experience, particularly because it can really sort of throw you into that lower cross syndrome if you're not careful. So first of all, it's important to note that we all have some kind of postural distortion or muscle imbalance. We're all human. No one's got a perfect posture. But if you're someone with high demands on your voice, exploring your posture and alignment and taking some steps to kind of remedy that is going to be hugely beneficial to the freedom, the ease, and the effortlessness in your voice. It really is. You cannot underestimate this. It's huge. And I'm talking about this as someone that's experienced this firsthand with my own voice. And as I said, I could literally relate to all of those that he mentions in his work. So for me personally, one of the big turning points was when I started doing more performing, and I was standing on stage in heels, doing a lot of singing and talking, and I just found that my body was really struggling. I would get a lot of lower back pain, I would get neck pain, shoulder pain, all of this kind of stuff. And that's when I really started seriously doing Pilates. Now, I'm not here to kind of convince you to do Pilates, but whatever it is you need to do to try and rebalance your body is going to be hugely beneficial for you as a voice user with high demands. And so another thing that I've tried before, but I haven't really got into it in the same way as Pilates, is Alexander technique. I think that's also hugely beneficial. And I personally also do a lot of yoga for the sort of strength and flexibility work. I think it's just worth exploring what resonates with you in terms of this. But to start with, if you're not sure if any of this really relates to you or not, then maybe get someone to take a photo of you or video yourself speaking and just start to kind of notice what your body does habitually when you speak, particularly if you're moving around or you're moving your arms. Like, what do you do? Are you someone that juts your chin forward? Are you someone that sticks your bum out and pushes into your lower back? Or are you someone whose kind of knees collapse inwards? Like, what is your thing? Or maybe like me, you have a bit of everything. So it's just starting, first of all, as I say all the time, is to bring awareness. That's the first stage. And then you can actually work out what is the best way for me to kind of re-educate and repattern this in my body, because it really does make a huge difference. And I would also say, I mean, I had no idea personally about a lot of this in my own body. I was relying on experts and professionals to kind of help me see. I just kind of felt that things weren't working as well as they could. And I didn't know. A lot of the time, we don't know this stuff when it's a habitual pattern. So, but if you're feeling like your voice isn't working as well as it could be linked to your postural alignment. I hope that's really helped and at least brought some awareness perhaps to your own posture and how you use your body when you're speaking. If you enjoyed this video, please do like, share and subscribe, and also always comment below if you enjoyed the video, if you've got any questions, or if there's any topics you would like me to cover in the future. But until then, thank you so much, and I will see you on my next video.